great to be here amongst a lot of friends and back up on Museum Hill. And your reference to the new Legacy Society, which I can tell you is really important, reminded me of a story I heard about Judge Seth. Now, many of you know Gene's husband, right? So Gene calls up Judge Seth down at the courthouse. He was a federal judge here, and says, I want you to go over to the museum shop at the Art Museum, and I want you to buy this gift, which we're going to give to someone for a wedding. So at noon, he goes over, and then he says to the clerk at the shop, I am a member, so he gets his discount. And the clerk is looking through the list and says, well, I'm sorry, but I don't see you on here. He says, well, it has to be. He said, I'm a lifetime member. And she looks some more, and then she says, your membership has expired. Laurie Seth told me that story. That's just not myth from the foundation. Well, thank you, Charlie. And thank you, Linda. It truly is good to be here amongst friends in this great museum. And if you have not seen Folk Art of the Andes, you must, I say, see it. It is by far the best exhibit ever done here. I mean, it's that good. Well, you disagree. Maybe there's some others.
It's really good.
My history is short, maybe. But anyway, it is fabulous, and we have a great exhibit team that presented the scholarly work of Barbara in a beautiful way, so do see it. But I have to tell you that when Linda asked me to address the Santa Fe Botanical Garden, and I told my wife, she broke out in laughter. She said, you who plant flowers and forget to water them? So I said, next I thought I'd check with Deborah Madison's agent. And she said, no way, Tom. You will never pull it off. You had better lower your rate and people's expectations. So the question she presented is, I really wonder if you will be an annual speaker or a perennial speaker. So I'm just one of those wannabe gardeners that dreams about it all winter, right? Plants it in the spring and forgets it. So what can I say? But now you know, I and gardens, we're the odd couple, right? So, but anyway, I'm thrilled to be here and lending a hand. But as I thought about this, I thought about what you're doing for the community here, which is something very special. And, you know, creativity in gardens is really synonymous in many, many ways. And for example, gardens inspire creativity, and they really have from the beginning of time. As you will remember, the fifth word in the Bible is related to creativity. And it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And then in just a few words later, and God said, let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees bearing fruit in which is their seed, each according to its kind on the earth. For millenniums today, up to today, we see spring, new creations give bloom to the garden. There is great promise each spring in Santa Fe when the plants, the trees, the flowers bloom, giving promise to the coming fruit of each season. In Santa Fe and throughout New Mexico, many, many households survive by their cultural traditions and by their creativity. Households carry on cultural traditions and create new ideas and products to sell into our economy. At the Global Center for Cultural Entrepreneurship, in partnership with the Kellogg Foundation, we did some research in 3 of our state's poorest counties and found that households with a cultural entrepreneur are better off than any other household. Following the path of creativity, culture, and entrepreneurship can be a way to live a good life. So talking about cultural entrepreneurs, I want to say that Linda is amongst the best.
Here, here.
She has really carried the vision of the Botanical Garden for Santa Fe, and in it, it will be a reflection of our culture through plants and trees and flowers. Just as an example of other cultural entrepreneurs in our city, there's John Crosby, who started the opera, Miss Bartlett, who started this great museum, the White Sisters started SAR, Edgar Hewitt founded the Museum in New Mexico, all great cultural entrepreneurs. Santa Fe is a creative city, designated as such by UNESCO. We were the first city in the U.S. to receive this designation. And now you are adding yet another chapter of note to this designation. A word we often leave out of our conversations is patrimony. Here in Santa Fe, New Mexico, we have a cultural patrimony, a rich one. Patrimony is the product of our creativity, our innovation, and our survival and culture. We have a botanical patrimony here, and you are important guardians of that patrimony, putting much of it on display in the new garden. Often patrimony is dead in museums and libraries, but your vision is alive and growing each year. Patrimony tells us about our culture, and our culture defines who we are today. History tells us about the evolution of our culture. Gardens are part of our patrimony, and they have a long, long history in Santa Fe that you are carrying forward. To ask yourself, what was the oldest garden, the oldest food in New Mexico? What did the Native Americans plant for millenniums? Just the other day, the Museum in New Mexico Office of Archaeological Studies in the southwest of the state discovered the remains of pre-Mimbres civilization, a nomadic people. And what they found was they were processing all plants like mesquite pods and agave and prickly pear fruit and various other seeds and grasses. Then the Spanish brought new animals and new foods to our region. Then Bishop Lamy arrives on the scene. Martin Simmons wrote about Bishop Lamy's garden by the cathedral. He wrote, a total of 4 acres bordering Alameda were enclosed by an adobe wall and transformed into a bountiful oasis. On several trips east, Lamy brought back flowering shrubs and fruit trees, transporting them in cans of water inside oxen-drawn wagons. Who can imagine? Mark continues, at the upper edge of the bishop's garden bubbled a natural spring, which by the way was cut off, whose flow fed a half-acre pond. Small bridges connected 2 artificial islands on the water. Lamy stocked the pond with trout, pike, and American carp. The Daily New Mexican in 1875 reported that the fish bred very fast and provide more than is required at the Archbishop's own table. In fact, he sent surplus trout to St. Michael's College to be served to the students. When Lamy returned from visiting France and Italy, he brought back more new specimens, including our French lilac. Mark ends his article, now that St. Francis School and a large parking lot occupy this site. The only remainder that once was is a half-dead almond tree and a couple of pear trees on the edge of the property. The garden, a colorful part of old Santa Fe, is gone forever. Moving into the 20th century, Betty Burchard, who died this year at 103, was a Rosarian, a judge at the Horticultural Flower Arranging for the National Garden Club, and in 1994 was awarded the Medal of Merit from the Garden Club of America. Lieutenant Colonel Margaret Johnson had a large garden on Armenta Street near the corner of Armenta and Old Pecos Trail. She was well known in gardening circles and in the Dagan Hope Garden Club. I love that name. I'd never heard that before. And as well as being a founding member of the Santa Fe Foundation. Jack Daniels was a gardener and designer who was in the Dagan Hope Garden Club with Margaret. There's the Harvey H. Cornell Sr. Memorial Rose Garden. Its namesake was a National Park Service employee who served as a landscape architect on the 1939 National Park Service building on Old Santa Fe Trail. Others, Paulette Boyce was an important gardener. Elspeth Boggs' beautiful garden is a special place in Santa Fe. Rand Lee was an American Cottage Gardeners author. You know, you could create a Gardeners Hall of Fame. Now, it is you who are creating a colorful part of new Santa Fe. You are stepping into a long history of gardens and gardening, the botanical patrimony. You are part of Santa Fe history and its future. Now we're in the 21st century. The history will mark, as a highlight, what you are creating over here on Museum Hill. Did you know that here in the Museum of New Mexico, in the Museum of International Folk Art, you will find examples of trees of life created by folk artists? Do you know where that tradition came from? It came from people's spiritual life. So I began today with a few lines from Genesis, and I'll end today with the last book of the New Testament, where it says, "Through the middle of the street of the city, also on either side of the river, the tree of life, with its 12 kinds of fruit, yielding its fruit each month. The leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nation." Your work is creative, spiritual, part of our culture, integrates our history, and cares for our patrimony. May God bless you in your endeavors.